Welcome everybody to another episode of Cannabis Review. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm delighted to be joined by Nick Pateras, who's the Managing Director of Materia Europe. How are you keeping, Nick?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for having me today.
I'm delighted to talk to you today. There's going to be lots of exciting things happening in Europe over the next couple of years. So good to hear some inside information from one of the leading companies out there. So do you basically want to give everybody a little quick overview of how you got into the cannabis industry yourself and how you found yourself in Materia? And we'll move into our first topic then.
Yeah, sure. So my personal background is actually in the more traditional pharma space and healthcare space. So I spent most of my career actually working for Johnson & Johnson when I was based in Toronto. So I helped run some of their OTC businesses and some of their RX businesses as well. It's more on the commercial strategy side. And then after a few years there, was looking for something more, something smaller where I could make more of an impact. The cannabis space wasn't something that I'd thought about too early, but around 2016, it started to attract my attention. And I joined a small tech company called Lift & Co., which was well known in the Canadian industry for the expos that it put on every year. It attracted tens of thousands of consumers every year to its two shows. And I joined as an early stage employee, I think employee number 7. And we had a great series of 3 years together where we scaled the company up to 70 employees. There was a go public in the middle there and added a few businesses to it by way of a retail training program, a data analytics business as well. And then coming to the end of that time, I felt as though I wanted to be closer to the plant. And I was also really keen on what was happening in the European market. That timed well with when the Materia project was being put together by Deepak and Michael Garbaz, the other co-founder. So they asked me to join the management team. And in doing so, I relocated back to London, which is my place of birth. And so I'm now based in London, overseeing our European operations here.
Amazing, brilliant. Well, I'll get straight into the topics because there's a lot of things that I'd love to have more than 15 minutes with you because I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in Europe and you guys seem to be at one of the forefronts of it. Can you tell me the strategy that Materia have for the cannabis industry in Europe? What exactly is your position here in this?
Yeah, so we've got two business units. The primary one is really focused on medical cannabis. So on the medical cannabis side, we do processing and distribution. So our cornerstone asset is a facility that we have been building out in Malta. And just to be clear, we don't do cultivation. We never will. We think it's a very technical skill set to actually get agricultural operations of a plant like cannabis right, especially in an EU GMP environment. And of course, that vertical we think is going to become increasingly more competitive as all the sunnier, more tropical climates actually come online too. So right from the get-go, right from the initial architecture of the company, we decided that we didn't want to do cultivation. So in Malta, what we're actually doing is processing a flower into EU GMP and extraction as well. So that allows us to actually develop and QP release products into the European market from outside of Europe. That's really the cornerstone asset. We've been working on it for about 2 years now, and it's quite close to finalization and licensure. So we're excited about that. And then we stitched that processing ability together with our distribution asset in Germany. So about a year ago, we acquired a company that was almost fully licensed for distribution. We got it to the final stage of licensing and then actually have been trading in third-party products since then. And so those are the two pieces that we actually stitched together on the medical cannabis side.
Yeah, I was doing all my research. I saw that acquisition last year that you guys had and the EU GMP certification coming through in January. So it seems to be things are moving in the right direction with the right amount of energy behind them. The next topic I wanted to talk about is the mergers and acquisitions that we're having so far this year. Do you see 2021 being the year that the consolidation happens in Europe, or do you still think we're way off from that? We're just kind of having our first initial tease of these big deals?
I definitely think it's going to be the first wave of M&A for sure. I think you'll see, like we've seen in the Canadian market and to an extent in the US market, these things don't concentrate in a single 12-month period. But I think the first semblance of consolidation will definitely happen in Europe now, partly because the European market is starting to become more understood globally. the opportunity size is being appreciated. And I think now when the first few players actually start to engage in M&A activity, that really cues a lot more energy and interest in other types of M&A. So when we saw the Curaleaf EMMAC deal recently, I think that spawned a whole bunch of energy and excitement about what Europe represents.
Yeah, I think it's whether you're missing your friends going to the club or whether it's the investors missing out on the big opportunities, that fear of missing out generally drives a lot of footfall towards big deals.
Yeah, I think it also reflects, the general investment thesis on just broadening an addressable market, broadening a market that is going to, at some point in the future, not positing as to when, but eventually have recreational access open up. As we know, a couple of countries are already working on either recreational bills or recreational pilot programs. So for a big company like Curaleaf, which has US opening up in terms of whether it's banking access or whatever in the US, and they're actually looking beyond the US, I think it's a strong signal for what Europe actually represents as a whole other market to tap into.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And do you see basically the amount of people I've talked to, and like from the Bureau of Cannabis in California or the Department of Marijuana Enforcement in Colorado, everybody says that medical is just the conduit for recreational, and that seems to be where the money is and where the best regulation can happen when it gets to that level, because in essence a lot of consumers could be paying a specific price for a product that they could have a multitude range from when it becomes recreational. Do you see the model of pharmacies and the sales through pharmacies being the model for the next few years, or do you see that turning into dispensaries and, let's say, independent craft growers? Like with wine, let's say you're going to have a specific strain for each country or master growers in each country, and then it's who owns the distribution rights to these genetics will be the model.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I definitely think anytime adult use is legalized where there's a pre-existing medical framework, there's always a clash between the two. We saw it in Canada, where prices and certain products might not be available or might not be at equal levels between the two frameworks. In Europe, you have an interesting position because everything is sold through pharmacies, which is not the case in North America. The Canadian LPs who sell medically sell directly to consumers or patients, sorry. On the medical side, in the US, obviously, there are medical cannabis-specific dispensaries. Where in Europe, everything is dispensed through a pharmacy. So I think what the potential is, as Europe tiptoes towards recreational access, is actually governments will probably have adult use cannabis dispensed through pharmacies as well to begin with, which is the model that they actually employ in Uruguay. Yeah. That allows them to kind of grandfather in a legacy framework. It's probably a system that raises less eyebrows and raises less concern over diversion of products. The other thing, too, of course, to remember is recreational cannabis, unless there's a change at the UN treaty level, then there's never going to be able to have cannabis that actually flows across national borders. So any adult use cannabis was going to have to be grown and produced in country, whereas medical cannabis can cross national borders. So you also have what's probably going to be a bit of a patchwork of mini markets established once Europe is fully recreational, just like you have in the US right now, where it's basically a system of different states with slightly different frameworks.
And tell me this, one of the things that I'm kind of predicting, that being an Irishman, I like to think that the industry is going to be the exact same as we have the heads of IBM here, heads of Facebook, Google, everybody has their global headquarters here. I understand you guys are in Malta. The two corporate tax rates are obviously a big influence in a company taking a position somewhere. So I think Ireland could end up being the country that services the European cannabis industry through the service companies. We might not have the hugest grow operations or the best extraction facilities, but we have a highly intelligent young workforce. We're the only English-speaking country left in the EU now. I think there's going to be a lot of advantages to the positions of companies taking over here. What was the decision-making between Malta and any other country? Was it just a corporate tax rate, which is a completely perfect reason to choose that? It's something that I'd probably do myself if I was setting up in Europe and not from Europe.
Yeah, I mean, the corporate tax rate was obviously a part of our decision for sure. So for viewers who aren't familiar, as a foreign held entity, you can actually reduce your effective corporate tax rate down to 5%, which is a massive decline from the usual 30-35. So there's massive tax savings there. But outside of that, we were also really attracted to the way the Maltese government has been approaching the cannabis file for the last number of years. So in terms of the medical legislation and subsequent regulation they implemented, they're very progressive. And we've also found since coming in, because they were obviously doing work to attract foreign investment into the country, that they have really been as supportive and as incredible as we would have hoped they would have been, by way of addressing any questions that we have, working through the licensing process with us, almost as a partner, rather than just as solely as a regulator that shows up at the very end of the journey. So we've been very happy with that. And of course, the other piece with Malta that's on a commercial basis, but allows us to do things that a lot of other European countries do not, is basically processing non-EU GMP certified flour into EU GMP certified flour. That's a really important nuance that not many countries actually permit for right now. And so for us, what that does is it diversifies our supply chain. Of course, we have to do a full audit process of the supplier to make sure they're still up to certain specifications, but they don't actually have to have been inspected and certified by a European regulator for us to import their biomass as starting raw material. That's a huge differentiator for us, and it kind of changes and distinguishes our business model from most other operators in Europe.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, this has been highly informative so far. I'll leave you with one last thing. If you could predict how Europe is going to go over the next 5 years, do you see recreation within 5 years, or do you see a dominant pharmaceutical distribution model within 5 years?
I see most European countries enabling or broadening the medical cannabis laws that they have today. And I hope that we can get to a place where within 5 years, the entire European bloc and the UK have full medical access programs where any patient in need of a cannabis medicine is able to get it. I don't see much movement in the next 5 years on the adult use side, outside of the experiments and the trials that we already know of. So we know the Dutch are putting a system in place. We know Switzerland is putting a system in place for effectively on an experimental basis. I think those will go well. Those will start in the next 12 months. And then we'll probably, while we won't have implementation of adult use programs in the next 5 years, I do expect that you've got some bigger economies debating it sincerely and on the cusp of implementing adult use, I would hope.
Yeah, I think Italy might be one of those, and everybody's heard the rumblings of Luxembourg. It's whether how quickly that gets through their parliament is another thing. I think what you highlighted, Malta's government being open to the capital investment coming in and having a strategic plan to lure that investment in, is a great model that any country, I wish our government would be able to be have as much foresight and intelligence as Malta seems to have had. So thanks a million for coming on the show, Nick. We'll be keeping a close eye on Materia. I hope everything goes brilliantly for you this year, and lots more mergers and acquisitions for you ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back again with another episode in a few days.